2:15 in the morning. The Strait of HORMUZ. The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln moved through the black water at 15 knots. This was not a routine exit from the Persian Gulf. 40 Iranian naval mines had just been detected directly across the strike group's only deep water path. The question for the bridge crew was immediate. How had a massive minefield been laid in the most monitored waterway on Earth without a single sensor alarm until this moment? The water was flat and deceptively calm. It hid a staggered wall of steel and high explosives just 30 meters below the surface. The Lincoln was a city of steel weighing 100,000 tons. At its current speed, it was a juggernaut heading toward a trap. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air was cold and smelled of ozone. The CIC team sat in a dim blue glow. They watched their screens with a focus that bordered on physical pain. The sonar technician spoke. "Admiral, I have 40 distinct acoustic returns. They are moored. They are active." Admiral Miller stood behind the operator, confirmed the classification. The technician adjusted his headset. The signatures match the Iranian EM-52 naval mine. These are not practice shapes. They are live weapons. 2:22 in the morning. The Strait of HORMUZ is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. However, the deep water shipping lane required by a carrier is less than 2 miles across. The red icons on the tactical display formed a perfect line across that lane. There was no gap wide enough for a ship of this size to pass safely. The admiral turned to his tactical officer. "What is our distance to the first contact?" The officer checked his screen. 5,000 yards. We are closing at 25 feet per second. All stop. The admiral ordered. Bring the strike group to a full stop. Notify the escort destroyers to begin mine hunting procedures immediately. 2:27 in the morning. Stopping a carrier strike group in a narrow channel is a violent and complex maneuver. The massive engines reversed. The vibration hummed through the deck plates and into the soles of the sailors' boots. The Lincoln began to groan as its momentum fought the water. Outside, the night was silent. The lights of the Omani coastline flickered in the distance. They looked peaceful. They were a lie. The tactical officer spoke again. His voice was lower now. "Admiral, new contacts. 3 fast-moving surface targets have emerged from the Iranian coastline. They are crossing the wake of our rear destroyer." Admiral Miller looked at the radar. "Closing speed," the officer responded. 35 knots. They are boxing us in. We have a minefield to the front and an aggressive force closing from astern. 2:30 in the morning. The carrier slowed to a crawl. The escort ships moved into a protective screen around the massive vessel. Every sailor on watch understood the reality. They were no longer a strike group in transit. They were a stationary target in a pre-planned kill zone. The Iranian fast attack craft were not firing. They were simply positioning. They were waiting for the Americans to make a choice. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 2:35 in the morning. The northern reaches of the Strait of HORMUZ, the USS Abraham Lincoln, sat nearly motionless in the dark water. On the flight deck, the rotors of 2 MH-60S Seahawk helicopters began to turn. Their mission was dangerous. They would fly low over the minefield using laser-based detection systems to map the exact location of every contact. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tension was a physical weight. The acoustic signatures from the seabed were changing. The sonar supervisor leaned toward his screen. "Admiral, we have a secondary harmonic. These are not standard moored mines. These are EM-52 riser mines." Admiral Miller looked at the tactical map. "Explain the difference for the record." The supervisor spoke clearly. "A standard mine waits for a ship to hit it. An EM-52 riser mine waits for a specific acoustic signature. When it identifies a carrier, it fires a high-speed rocket-propelled warhead from the seafloor. It does not wait for us to drift into it. It comes to us." 2:40 in the morning. Kesham Island, Iranian Naval Command Center. Commander Rezai stood before a wall of monitors. He watched the heat signatures of the American carrier strike group. His men on the fast attack craft were reporting back. The Americans had stopped exactly where the trap was set. Rezai spoke to his communications officer. Maintain distance, 500 meters from their rear screen. Do not illuminate them with targeting radar. We are not here to start a war. We are here to show them the gate is closed. The officer nodded. The Americans are launching helicopters. Let them fly, Rizai said. The more they see, the more they will understand their position. They are in a box made of physics and high explosives. 2:43 in the morning. The radio on the bridge of the Lincoln crackled to life. The Iranian commander spoke. Coalition warship. This is the Iranian Navy. You are currently entering a restricted exercise zone. For your safety, you must remain at your current position. Captain Higgins, the commander of the Lincoln, looked at the admiral. Miller nodded once. Higgins keyed his handset. Iranian vessel. This is the United States ship Abraham Lincoln. We are in international waters. We are conducting a lawful transit. Your placement of underwater hazards in a recognized shipping lane is a violation of international law. The response was immediate. Captain, the law does not protect a ship that is currently sitting on a trigger. 2:45 in the morning. One of the Seahawk helicopters reached the first coordinates. The pilot looked down at his sensor display. The laser had penetrated the water. The pilot spoke over the internal circuit. Control, Raven 1-1. I have eyes on the first contact. It is not alone. I am seeing multiple cables. Admiral, there is a secondary line of mines. They are deeper. They were hidden under the first layer. The tactical officer in the Combat Information Center turned to Admiral Miller. His face was pale. Sir, if there is a second layer, we did not just stop in front of the minefield. We stopped directly on top of it. The morning was getting smaller. The trap was not a wall. It was a floor. 2:50 in the morning. The bridge of the USS Abraham Lincoln. The air in the Combat Information Center felt heavy. The discovery of a second layer of mines changed everything. They were no longer facing a wall. They were parked on a trigger. The admiral stood in the center of the room. He watched the tactical display. Each red icon represented a potential catastrophe. The admiral spoke. Evaluate the riser depth. I need to know exactly how much room we have before those sensors trip. The sonar supervisor responded immediately. The deep layer is moored at 60 meters. They are spaced 50 meters apart. It is a perfect grid. If we move our propellers at high revolutions, the acoustic signature will wake them up. These mines are programmed to ignore small ships. They are looking for the sound of 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered carrier. 2:55 in the morning, 5 miles to the south, 3 Iranian fast attack craft increased speed. They were Bagamar-class boats. They were small, fast, armed with rocket launchers and heavy machine guns. They began a circular pattern around the rear of the American strike group. They moved with a practiced precision that suggested they had rehearsed this maneuver many times. The commander of the lead Iranian boat spoke into his radio. We have the giant in our sights. He is afraid to move. Continue the circle. Keep the distance at 400 meters. Do not cross the line unless I give the order. The Iranian sailors watched the massive silhouette of the carrier against the stars. To them, the Lincoln was a mountain of steel. It was a symbol of power that was currently paralyzed by a few dozen canisters of explosives. They felt the surge of adrenaline that comes with holding a superior enemy at bay. 3:02 in the morning. On the Lincoln, the tactical officer pointed to the radar screen. Admiral, the fast attack craft are closing. They are inside our minimum engagement zone for the primary missiles. If they fire, we will have seconds to react. Our defense systems are ready. But a single hit on the flight deck could be a disaster. Admiral Miller did not look away from the screen. Do not arm the phalanx systems yet. We do not want to trigger their sensors with our radar energy. Tell the USS Higgins to put herself between us and those boats. Use her hull as a shield. The Higgins has a shallower draft. She might be able to maneuver more freely than we can. The USS Higgins was an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. It began to slide through the water at 3 knots. Every rotation of its screws felt like a gamble. The crew held their breath. They waited for the sound of a rocket motor from the seafloor. They were moving through a minefield to protect their flagship. The ocean remained silent, but the sonar display was glowing with yellow alerts. The sensors below were detecting the movement. 3:10 in the morning. The Iranian boats stopped their circle. They sat directly in the carrier's wake. This was a position of maximum leverage. Any attempt by the Lincoln to reverse or turn would put its vulnerable stern toward the Iranian weapons. Commander Rezai watched from the shore facility on Keshem Island. He saw the American destroyer move. He saw the carrier remain still. He knew the pressure the American admiral was feeling. It was the pressure of 1,000 tons of water and 50 kilograms of high explosive. Rezai spoke to his aide. The Americans are professional. They are calculating the risk. They are looking for a third option that does not exist. We have given them a choice between a retreat and a disaster. Both are victories for us. Back on the Lincoln, the admiral looked at his staff. They have boxed us. If we move forward, we hit the first wall. If we stay still, we are a target for those fast attack boats. If we move the screws too fast, the floor rises to meet us. The tactical officer wiped sweat from his brow. Sir, we have a new problem. One of the mines in the deep layer just changed its acoustic state. It is no longer passive. It is searching. It has localized our engine noise. The drone of the carrier's generators was a dinner bell for the smart mines below. The trap was no longer waiting. It was beginning to hunt. The admiral stared at the red icon flashing on the screen. How long until it achieves a lock? The supervisor did not hesitate. 4 minutes, maybe less. The mine is calculating the distance. When it reaches the threshold, it will fire the rocket motor. The morning was no longer quiet. The sound of a digital hunt had begun. 3:15 in the morning. The Flag Command Center of the USS Abraham Lincoln. Admiral Miller looked at the red folder on the digital desk. It contained the rules of engagement. These were the legal and tactical boundaries for the use of force. The language was precise. If a unit of the United States Navy is under an imminent threat of attack, the commander has the inherent right and obligation to use all necessary means to defend his ship. The admiral looked at the screen. One of the mines below was active. It was hunting the acoustic signature of the carrier. The admiral spoke to the legal officer. Is a smart mine with an active sensor considered an imminent threat? The legal officer responded, Sir, under the current rules, it is an act of aggression. You are authorized to neutralize the threat. However, neutralizing a mine in this position will likely cause a chain reaction. It would destroy the carrier. 3:20 in the morning, 5 miles to the east. Commander Rezai watched the tactical data from his fast attack craft. The American destroyer, the USS Higgins, was moving slowly toward the line of boats. It was a game of chicken played with thousands of tons of steel. Rezai spoke into his radio. To the lead boat. The American destroyer is attempting to shield the carrier. Do not move. If they collide with you, it is their fault. We are in our own territorial waters. They are the intruders. The Iranian boat captains acknowledged the order. They sat in the dark. Their engines were idling. They were small dots of heat on the American thermal cameras. They were professional. They were disciplined. They knew that a single pull of a trigger could change the history of the region. 3:25 in the morning. The bridge of the USS Higgins. The captain of the destroyer looked through his binoculars. The Iranian boats were less than 300 meters away. He could see the silhouettes of the sailors on their decks. The captain spoke to his weapons officer. Range to the nearest contact. The officer responded, 280 meters. They are not moving. We are on a collision course. The captain spoke into the radio. Iranian vessel. You are obstructing the passage of a United States Navy ship. Turn to starboard or we will be forced to take evasive action. You are creating a dangerous situation. The response was silence. The Iranian boats did not move. 3:30 in the morning. Back on the Abraham Lincoln. The tactical officer looked at the sonar data. Admiral, the active mine has reached the second stage of its engagement sequence. It has localized our position. It is preparing to fire the rocket motor. We have 3 minutes. The admiral turned to his staff. We cannot stay here. If we move, we hit the mines in front. If we stay, the mine below hits us. If we shoot the Iranian boats, we start a war that kills everyone in this channel. A pause. The room was silent. Only the hum of the cooling fans filled the air. The Admiral spoke. "There is a third option. We are going to use the wake of the Higgins. If she moves fast enough, her acoustic signature might mask ours. We will follow her path exactly. We will move the carrier into the gap she creates." The tactical officer shook his head. "Admiral, the gap is less than 10 meters wider than our hull. It is like driving a truck through a needle. Then we better be the best drivers in the world," the Admiral said. "Signal the Higgins. Tell them to prepare for a high-speed sprint through the minefield. We are going to follow them in." The morning was no longer a standoff. It was a race against a computer chip on the seafloor. 3:35 in the morning. The flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln. Two MH-60 Seahawk helicopters lifted off into the humid night air. Their engines roared as they transitioned into a low hover, just 20 feet above the swells. These aircraft were equipped with the airborne laser mine detection system. A blue-green laser pulsed from a pod beneath the fuselage. It sliced through the dark water to create a three-dimensional map of the minefield in real time. The lead pilot spoke to the carrier bridge. "Control. Raven 1-1. We are beginning the sweep. The water clarity is poor. We are seeing high concentrations of silt. We have to fly slower than planned to get a clean return." 3:39 in the morning. The Iranian Naval Command Center on Keshem Island. Commander Rezai watched the infrared feed from a shore-based drone. He saw the American helicopters hovering near the mine line. He saw the USS Higgins begin to pivot its hull. To the Iranian commander, this did not look like a retreat. It looked like the beginning of an assault. Rezai picked up the secure handset to his flotilla. "To all units, the Americans are preparing to move. They are using their helicopters to find a path. If they attempt to clear a lane using explosives, you are authorized to engage. Do not let them neutralize the field. The mines are our sovereign territory." On the water, the Iranian fast attack craft responded. Their crews uncovered the launchers for their C-802 anti-ship missiles. These were older weapons, but at a range of 5 miles, they were lethal. They began to paint the American destroyer with targeting radar. 3:45 in the morning. The bridge of the USS Higgins. The electronic warfare officer shouted over the hum of the equipment. "Captain, we are being painted. 3 separate fire control radars are active. They have a lock on us." The captain of the Higgins did not flinch. "Maintain course. Keep the signature low. Admiral Miller wants us to be the ghost. If we turn on our own targeting radar, we confirm the engagement. Let them watch us." The destroyer was now moving at 5 knots. It was heading directly for the gap identified by the helicopters. The crew was at the highest state of readiness. Damage control teams stood in the passageways wearing flash gear and carrying oxygen bottles. They knew that if a riser mine fired, the Higgins would be the first to take the hit. 3:52 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the Lincoln. The sonar supervisor's voice was urgent. "Admiral, the riser mine is at 95% signal correlation. It has locked onto our primary shaft noise. It is going to fire." Admiral Miller looked at the tactical map. The Higgins was almost in position. The gap was narrow. The timing was impossible. The Admiral spoke into the fleet net. "Higgins, this is 7. You are clear to sprint. Give me everything you have. Mask our signature now." The captain of the Higgins responded. "Copy. All ahead flank. Marking the lane." The destroyer's 4 gas turbine engines screamed to life. They dumped massive amounts of power into the twin screws. The ship lurched forward. A huge white wake boiled up behind the stern. This wall of bubbles and churning water created an acoustic nightmare for any sensor below. It was a physical shield of sound. 3:55 in the morning. 3:55 in the morning. The riser mine on the seafloor detected the massive surge in noise. Its processor struggled to distinguish between the carrier and the fast-moving destroyer. The logic gates in the mine's computer fluctuated. It stayed in the armed state. It waited for the sound to stabilize. Outside, the Iranian boats saw the American destroyer suddenly accelerate. They saw the black smoke from its stacks. They assumed a missile launch was imminent. Commander Rezai gripped the edge of his desk. Prepare the shore batteries. If that destroyer fires a single shot, we sink the carrier. The entire Strait of HORMUZ was now a hair trigger. 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered aircraft carrier began to slide forward into the wake of its protector. The gap was opening, but the riser mine was still counting down. The morning was no longer a standoff. It was a high-speed gamble with 1,000 lives on the line. 4 o'clock in the morning. The USS Higgins was a wall of noise. Its screws churned the water into a white frenzy of bubbles and cavitation. Behind it, the Abraham Lincoln pushed forward. 100,000 tons of steel followed the path of churned water. The carrier was trying to hide its acoustic signature. Inside the chaos of the destroyer's wake. Inside the carrier, the sonar supervisor shouted, "The riser mine is active. It has cleared the seafloor. Rocket ignition detected. Launch, launch, launch." A muffled roar vibrated through the hulls of both ships. A rocket-propelled warhead ignited 60 meters below the surface. It was a robotic hunter. It was programmed to find the loudest sound in the channel. It began its high-speed ascent. 4, 0, 1, and 30 seconds in the morning. On the Iranian fast attack craft, the commanders saw the American movement. They saw the black smoke from the Higgins. They saw the carrier accelerating into the gap. To the Iranian sailors, this looked like a breakout maneuver. "Fire control. Lock," the lead Iranian boat commander ordered. "The Americans are attempting to bypass the gate. Do not let them exit. If they clear the gap, our leverage is gone." Digital tones filled the small Iranian cockpits. The seekers on the C-802 missiles were cooled. The targeting computers calculated the lead. The targets were locked. 4:02 in the morning. The bridge of the Lincoln erupted in sound. Alarms for incoming radar locks screamed from every console. Missile lock. Multiple. From the southern flotilla. The tactical officer reported. Admiral Miller gripped the cold metal railing of the bridge. "Do not return fire. I repeat, do not return fire. Deploy the Nulka decoys. Use the chaff launchers. We cannot start a surface war while a riser mine is in the air. Focus on defense." 4:03 in the morning. The riser mine breached the surface of the water. It was a spear of fire and steel. It was not heading for the carrier. The acoustic masking of the Higgins had worked too well. The mine was tracking the massive roar of the destroyer's engines. "Brace for impact," the captain of the Higgins shouted over the internal net. "All hands, brace, brace, brace." The destroyer turned hard to starboard. It fired its 5-inch gun at the incoming threat in a desperate manual engagement. The rounds splashed into the water. The mine was too fast. It was a fire-and-forget weapon with a singular focus. 4:04 in the morning. The Iranian boat crews saw the plume of the riser mine. In the darkness and the heat of the moment, they did not see a mine. They saw an American launch. They believed the Higgins had fired on them. 3 missiles ignited from the Iranian decks. They streaked across the black water. They were sea skimmers. They flew just 10 feet above the waves to hide from radar. They were heading for the side of the carrier. 4:04 and 30 seconds in the morning. The Lincoln was trapped. A rocket was approaching from the front. 3 missiles were closing from the side. The phalanx close-in weapon systems on the carrier began to spin. Their barrels reached 6,000 rounds per minute. The sky was suddenly filled with a wall of tungsten tracers. The riser mine was 300 meters from the Higgins. The Iranian missiles were 2 miles from the Lincoln and closing at Mach 0.9. 4 o'clock in the morning. A shadow appeared on the radar. It was massive. It was over 300 meters long. It was the Omani flag tanker, the HORMUZ Star. The vessel was transiting without its navigation lights. It was ignoring all emergency broadcasts. It cut directly through the engagement zone between the Iranian boats and the American carrier. The 3 Iranian missiles were just 600 meters from the side of the Lincoln. Their infrared seekers were looking for the heat of the carrier's engines. Suddenly, the massive hot hull of the supertanker blocked their view. The missile's logic gates failed. 2 of them impacted the water. The third grazed the tanker's superstructure and exploded in the air. Inside the Iranian command center, Commander Rezai stood frozen. Cease fire. Cease fire immediately. We are hitting neutral shipping. 4:07 in the morning. The riser mine was seconds from the hull of the USS Higgins. The massive acoustic roar of the tanker's engines filled the water. The mine seeker was overwhelmed by the sound of the tanker's 300,000-ton displacement. The rocket-propelled warhead veered away from the destroyer. It streaked toward the open water between the ships. A massive pillar of white water erupted 500 meters from the carrier. The shockwave rattled the Lincoln, but there was no metal-on-metal contact. Admiral Miller watched the screen. The chaos had created a moment of absolute clarity. Look at the sonar returns from the explosion. The shockwave just cleared the silt. There is a gap. 4:08 in the morning. The Seahawk helicopter pilot, Raven 11, spoke over the radio. Admiral, the explosion moved 2 of the moored mines. There is a lane. It is 300 feet wide. It is exactly where the tanker is passing now. The Omani tanker was unintentionally acting as a minesweeper. It was moving through the field. Its massive draft was pushing water aside and creating a temporary acoustic shadow. Admiral Miller gripped the edge of the console. This is our window. If we follow that tanker, we can exit the channel. We will use her as a physical shield. Higgins, get in front of us. We are moving now. 4:09 in the morning. On the Iranian fast attack craft, the crews were in shock. They had almost started a world war with a neutral nation. They watched the massive American carrier begin to move. It was tucking itself directly behind the stern of the Omani tanker. Commander Rezai spoke into his radio. His voice was no longer confident. Do not engage. The Americans are using the tanker as a shield. If we fire now, we destroy the world's oil supply. We cannot touch them. 4:10 in the morning. The Lincoln entered the narrow gap. The red icons on the sonar display were blinking. The mines were less than 50 meters from the carrier's hull. The ship was moving into the most dangerous 5 miles of its life. The morning was no longer a standoff. It was a procession of giants through a field of death. 4:15 in the morning. The bridge of the USS Abraham Lincoln. The massive carrier was now tucked directly behind the stern of the Omani tanker. The distance between the two ships was less than 200 feet. To a casual observer, it looked like a collision in slow motion. To the navigator of the Lincoln, it was the only way to survive. The navigator spoke. Admiral, our bow is 60 meters from the tanker stern. We are holding steady at 8 knots. If the tanker slows down, we will override her. Admiral Miller stood at the forward windows. He could see the massive, rust-streaked hull of the HORMUZ star towering above the water just ahead. Maintain the interval. We stay in their acoustic and physical shadow. If those mines are looking for a carrier signature, let them find the tanker instead. 4:20 in the morning. The sonar room was a tomb of silence. Every technician had their eyes locked on the waterfall displays. The red icons of the moored mines were sliding past the carrier's hull on both sides. The sonar supervisor whispered, Contact 7. Port side. Distance is 40 meters. Contact 8. Starboard side. Distance is 35 meters. On the tactical screen, the Lincoln looked like a thread passing through the eye of a needle. A single gust of wind, or a minor steering error, would push the 100,000-ton vessel into a wall of explosives. The ship was moving through a graveyard of steel. 4:22 in the morning. The lead Iranian fast attack craft. The Iranian commander stood on his open deck. He could smell the diesel exhaust from the American carrier. He was close enough to see the individual rivets on the carrier's hull through his night vision goggles. His finger was on the radio trigger. The commander spoke to his base. Command, the Americans are using the Omani vessel as a human shield. They are moving through the center of the field. We cannot engage without hitting the tanker. Confirm instructions. Commander Rezai's voice came back through the static. Maintain position. Do not fire. If you hit that tanker, the oil spill will close our own ports for a decade. Let them pass. We have proven we can stop them. That is enough for tonight. The Iranian boat slowed down. It drifted away from the carrier's wake. The immediate threat of a missile strike was fading, but the danger under the water was increasing. 4:26 in the morning. The Lincoln reached the narrowest part of the channel. The Omani tanker began to turn slightly to follow the deep water bend. This was the moment of maximum risk. The carrier had to mimic the turn perfectly. If the Lincoln's stern swung too wide, it would clip a moored mine. The captain spoke. "Hard port rudder, 5 degrees, small adjustments only, watch the swing." The massive ship began to pivot. The deck groaned under the stress. In the sonar room, the supervisor's voice went up an octave. "Contact 9 is closing. 20 meters, 10 meters. Admiral, we are within the magnetic trigger radius." 4:30 in the morning. The bridge crew held their breath. They waited for the hull-crushing explosion that would signal the end. The seconds stretched into minutes. The giant ship continued its slow, graceful turn behind the tanker. The sonar supervisor exhaled. "Contact 9 is astern. We are clear of the first cluster." Admiral Miller did not relax his posture. "How many more?" The supervisor checked his map. 12 more contacts before we reach deep water. We are halfway through the gate." The carrier continued its silent crawl. The Iranian boats watched from the darkness. The world was waiting for the next sound. It was the sound of a ship escaping a trap, or the sound of a trap finally snapping shut. 4:35 in the morning. The deep water lane of the Strait of HORMUZ. The USS Abraham Lincoln was a ghost following a giant. The massive Omani tanker ahead was clearing a path through the water, but it could not clear the magnetic field. Every ship has a magnetic signature. A carrier has one of the largest on Earth. The mines below were sensitive to these changes in the local magnetic environment. Inside the carrier, the magnetic silencing system was running at maximum capacity. It was an electronic shield designed to trick the mines. The engineer spoke over the internal line. "Admiral, the degaussing coils are at 110%. We are drawing massive power from the reactors to keep the signature suppressed. We cannot hold this level of output for more than 15 minutes." Admiral Miller looked at the chart. "We only need 12. Keep the power flowing. If we lose the coils, every mine in this channel will wake up at once." 4:42 in the morning. Keshem Island Command Center. Commander Rezai watched the thermal imagery. The American carrier was a mountain of heat. It was moving with a precision that he had to respect. He saw the white water from the degaussing systems. He knew what the Americans were doing. They were fighting a battle of physics against his sensors. Rezai spoke to his aide. "They are using every kilowatt of their nuclear plants to hide. It is a brilliant move. But it is also a desperate one. If they have a single mechanical failure now, the ship is lost." The aide looked at the radar. "Should we move the boats closer to disrupt their concentration?" "No," Rezai said. "We have done our job. The world sees that we can force a carrier to hide behind a civilian tanker. The message is sent. We do not need a sinking to win this night." 4:50 in the morning. A new alarm sounded on the bridge of the Lincoln. It was a proximity alert from the underwater laser system. The pilot of the Seahawk helicopter, Raven 11, shouted into the radio, "Break port. Break port now. Contact 11 is drifting. It is not moored. It is a floater. A floating mine is a nightmare. It moves with the current. It is unpredictable." This one was drifting directly into the path of the carrier's starboard propeller. "Hard port rudder," Captain Higgins ordered. "Increase speed to 10 knots. We have to swing the stern away from that contact." The carrier began to move. The gap between the carrier and the tanker widened. This exposed the carrier's hull to the open water of the minefield. The acoustic signature spiked. The magnetic field shifted. 4:55 in the morning. The sonar supervisor's voice was a frantic whisper. "Multiple magnetic sensors are tripping. We are hitting the threshold. The mines are beginning their arming cycles. We have 60 seconds before the first riser fires." The Lincoln was caught between a drifting mine and a field of smart weapons. The giant ship groaned as it fought the water. The crew felt the vibration of the engines through the floor. It was the sound of a ship trying to run in a room full of glass. 500 meters to the exit, the navigator shouted. 400 meters. The Admiral did not move. He watched the red icons on the screen. They were no longer just icons. They were countdowns. 5 o'clock in the morning. The bow of the Lincoln passed the final buoy of the restricted channel. The water deepened. The seafloor dropped away from 200 feet to 600 feet. The mines were now too far below to reach the hull. The sonar supervisor slumped in his chair. Acoustic signatures fading. We are in deep water. We are clear. The admiral took a deep breath. He looked out at the horizon. The first hint of dawn was a thin gray line to the east. Signal the strike group, Miller said. Resume standard formation. Get us into the open sea. The carrier began to pull away from the tanker. The danger was over, but the silence on the bridge was heavy. They had survived, but the rules of the ocean had changed forever. 5:10 in the morning. The edge of the Gulf of Oman. The USS Abraham Lincoln increased speed to 20 knots. The massive wake of the carrier began to broaden. It pushed aside the dark water of the open sea. For the first time in 3 hours, the depth sounder showed more than 500 meters of water beneath the keel. The immediate threat of the riser mines was gone. The seafloor was now too deep for the Iranian rocket-propelled warheads to reach the hull. Inside the Combat Information Center, the blue light seemed less oppressive. But there was no cheering. There were no high fives. The crew remained at their stations. They were professionals who had just looked into the abyss. They knew the difference between a victory and a narrow escape. Admiral Miller turned to his chief of staff. Status of the degaussing coils. The officer checked a secondary monitor. Temperatures are falling, Admiral. We pushed the system to 115% of its rated capacity. We have some minor insulation scorching in the forward compartments, but the integrity of the magnetic shield held. We are lucky we did not blow a transformer in the middle of that field. 5:20 in the morning. The southern edge of the Strait of HORMUZ. The Iranian fast attack craft had stopped their pursuit. They sat in a line, bobbing in the swells created by the departing American strike group. The Iranian sailors watched the silhouette of the carrier grow smaller on the horizon. They had stayed within their territorial waters. They had executed their mission without firing a single shot that hit a hull. On the bridge of the lead Iranian boat, the commander picked up the long-range radio. He spoke to the USS Higgins. The Iranian commander spoke. American warship. You have exited the restricted zone. We hope your transit was educational. The gates of the Persian Gulf remain under our watch. Safe journey. The captain of the Higgins waited 5 seconds before responding. Iranian vessel. We acknowledge your transmission. We are proceeding into international waters. We suggest you clear your minefield before a civilian ship is lost. Out. 5:25 in the morning. The Iranian command center on Qasem Island. Commander Rezai watched the digital icons of the American ships move into the wide expanse of the Arabian Sea. He leaned back in his chair. The room was quiet. His officers were already beginning to compile the sensor data from the engagement. They had recorded every acoustic and magnetic signature the Lincoln had emitted while trying to hide. Rezai spoke to his senior analyst. We have what we came for. We know exactly how their silencing systems respond to the riser mines. We know how close they have to get to a tanker to hide. This data is worth more than a dozen sunk destroyers. We have mapped the limits of their confidence. The analyst nodded. They will change their tactics after tonight, Commander. Let them, Rezai said. We will change our minds. This is a game that never ends. For tonight, the Strait belongs to those who live here. 5:30 in the morning. The bridge of the Lincoln. The sun began to break over the horizon. It turned the gray water into a shimmering field of gold. The Omani tanker, the HORMUZ Star, was now 2 miles ahead. It was continuing its journey toward the Indian Ocean. Its crew likely had no idea they had served as a physical shield for a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Admiral Miller looked at the tactical display one last time. The red icons of the minefield were now far behind them. The strike group was reforming into its standard protective diamond. The destroyers took their positions on the flanks. The helicopters returned to the flight deck for refueling. The admiral spoke to the captain. Secure from general quarters. Let the crew get some food and rest. But keep the sonar teams on high alert. We are out of the Strait, but we are not out of the region. Copy that, Admiral, Captain Higgins said. It was a close one. Too close, Miller responded. "We did not win tonight. We survived." There is a difference. The morning was bright and clear. The ocean looked empty. It was a lie that the crew of the Lincoln would remember for the rest of their lives. 1:30 in the afternoon. The Arabian Sea. The USS Abraham Lincoln was now 300 miles from the Strait of HORMUZ. The carrier moved at a steady 24 knots. On the surface, the ship appeared calm. Below the flight deck, the atmosphere was clinical. In a high-security briefing room, Admiral Miller sat with his senior intelligence officers. They were reviewing the data recovered by the Seahawk helicopters during the transit. The intelligence officer pointed to a high-resolution image on the screen. "Admiral, we have finished the initial analysis of the acoustic logs. These were not generic Iranian mines. The EM-52 riser mines were programmed with a specific acoustic library. They were not looking for any large ship. They were looking for the exact frequency of the Lincoln's 4 turbine generators." Admiral Miller leaned forward. "Are you saying they were target-specific?" The officer nodded. "Yes, sir. This implies they had a recent recording of our unique signature. They knew we were coming. They knew exactly which ship to ignore and which one to kill." This realization changed the nature of the encounter. It was not a random exercise. It was a precision ambush designed to hold a specific American asset hostage. The use of the Omani tanker as a shield had been a tactical improvisation that the Iranian logic gates had not fully anticipated. 3 days later, the Pentagon, Washington. A closed-door session of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was underway. The room was silent as the digital reconstruction of the HORMUZ transit played on the main screens. The tactical data showed the carrier huddled behind the tanker. It showed the riser mines activating and then losing their lock. A senior general spoke. "The Iranians have demonstrated a new level of deniability. They laid a live minefield in international waters. They engaged our ships with riser technology. And yet, because they used a civilian vessel as a buffer and pulled back at the last second, there is no smoking gun for a full-scale retaliation." The chief of naval operations looked at the map. "They have weaponized the geography of the strait. They proved that a dozen fast boats and 40 smart mines can paralyze a $100 billion strike group. The strategic cost of this event is enormous. Every maritime insurance company in the world just tripled their rates for the Gulf. The gate is not closed, but the toll has just gone up." 8 o'clock in the evening, Tehran. A formal report was delivered to the highest levels of the Iranian government. It did not focus on the fact that the American carrier had escaped. Instead, it focused on the psychological impact. The report noted that for 3 hours, the most powerful navy in history had been forced to hide behind a commercial oil tanker to survive. The tactical victory belonged to the Americans for their seamanship. The strategic victory belonged to the Iranians for their audacity. Both sides had looked into the fire and chosen to step back. But the restraint shown by both commanders was not a sign of peace. It was a sign of calculation. In the waters of the strait, the mines remained. Some were recovered by Iranian divers under the cover of darkness. Others remained moored in the deep silt. They were silent sentinels waiting for the next acoustic signature to match their internal library. The world's most important waterway was quiet again, but the silence was heavy. The incident would later be known among naval historians as the HORMUZ Gate. It was the night the rules of maritime engagement were rewritten by a ghost and a giant. 10 in the morning, 3 days after the transit. The Indian Ocean. The USS Abraham Lincoln moved through deep blue water. The ship was now hundreds of miles from the nearest coastline. On the flight deck, flight operations had resumed their normal rhythm. The screaming of jet engines and the hiss of steam catapults filled the air. To a casual observer, the carrier looked invincible. But inside the ship, the memory of the strait remained a sharp and cold reality. The tactical analysis teams in Hawaii and Washington had finished their first review. The data was clear. The Iranian Navy had not intended to sink the carrier. They had intended to prove they could. The strategic assessment report was titled "The New Normal." It was a classified document that would change how the United States Navy operated in confined waters. The report noted that the traditional advantage of a massive aircraft carrier was neutralized in a narrow channel. A few $1 million in smart mines had successfully held a $15 billion asset at bay for 3 hours. 11:15 in the morning. In a quiet corner of the carrier bridge, Admiral Miller stood alone. He looked out at the horizon. He was thinking about the Iranian commander on the other side of the water. He wondered if that man was also standing on a deck somewhere, looking at the same sea. The admiral spoke to his chief of staff. "We are going to need new protocols. We cannot rely on the luck of a passing tanker next time. The technology of the mine has outpaced our ability to detect it in real time." The chief of staff nodded. "The engineers are already looking at autonomous underwater vehicles for the next transit. We will sweep the lane 24 hours in advance." "It will not be enough," Miller said. "If they can lay them that fast, we will always be playing catch-up. The Strait is no longer a highway. It is a locked room. And they have the key." 2:45 in the afternoon. The story of the encounter began to leak into the global media. There were no videos of explosions. There were no images of burning ships. To the public, it was just another close call in a long history of tension. But the markets felt the shift. The cost of shipping oil through the Strait rose by 4% in a single day. Naval experts would later agree that the HORMUZ Gate was a turning point. It was the moment the world realized that modern warfare is not always about the loudest explosion. It is about the quietest threat. It is about the sensor that does not trip and the missile that is never fired. The final analysis was simple. The USS Abraham Lincoln had escaped because of a combination of elite seamanship and a chaotic variable that no one could have predicted. The Omani tanker had been the ghost that saved the giant. No missiles flew, no ships were lost, but history shifted. When the line was crossed, both sides chose restraint. Modern warfare is decided not by who fires first, but by who chooses not to fire at all. The ocean remained a vast and empty blue. The sun set over the Arabian Sea, casting long shadows across the deck of the carrier. The Lincoln continued its mission. It moved toward the next horizon, carrying the weight of a silent victory. The gate was still there. It was waiting for the next ship. It was waiting for the next night. And the mines were still beneath the silt, listening to the heartbeat of the world.